Hey everyone, welcome back to Stars of the Diamond, and my name is Rhett, and today I'm going to be going over one of my favorite sets of all time, the N172, 1886, 1887, all the way to 1890 Old Judge cigarettes set. And this is not intended to be a deep dive into this set, but I really want to just kind of go over some generalities about the set, dating, and how I like to collect them. But just to get a good start, we're going to go over just some cards. So these cards were made between 1886, 1887, the first year, all the way to 1890, and were inserted into Goodwin and Company's Old Judge brand cigarettes. And they, in this set, made over 500 different players, some players being represented by a single image, while others have 9, 10 plus different images of the same person. And so we can kind of see some players here. I'm going to try not to get so much glare, but it's tough with these sleeves. Little Nick Nickel for Cincinnati, Pop Shriver for Philadelphia, George Turner for Minneapolis, George McVeigh for St. Joe. And this stack here, these first two stacks, are just kind of generic players. And I'm going to share some of my favorite sort of subsets within this. And there's no wrong way to collect them. They are photographs attached to thick cardboard. Maybe I'll show that first. So if I take a card out here, you can see the thickness of that. It is a pretty hefty little thing. It is a thickener, and think of an average Topps card, like 3 or 4 of them standing on top of sitting on top of each other in a stack. That's about the thickness of these. So they tend to, when they do crease, they tend to split, and so they are different in thickness. Burks. One of the main things with this set that you want to be looking for is the photo quality, because they can come in a variety of photo qualities. You can get cards that are fairly tough to see with poor image quality, like you see here. And then you can get cards that have varying degrees of clarity. And while a technical grade of a card like this, if there's back damage, may only be like a 1 or a 2, but if it has a nice image quality like this, it tends to be in much higher demand by those that collect this set. The image quality, for me at least, is paramount. I know there are other people that are more about the technical grade. Tougher player there in Pete Connell. And again, I'm just kind of showing these as like a rough gauge, but I'm going to kind of show you how I collect them. And there's no real wrong way to collect them. I think the most common way to collect them is potentially just favorite players, Hall of Famers, things of that nature. And again, this is not a deep dive video. I just want to give a brief overview. So another thing that people can do is collect teams. And some of the more popular teams are the Baltimore players. So we have Pat Whitaker here for Baltimore, and Frank Foreman for Baltimore. And both of those have pretty nice image quality, despite the fact that they are lower technical grade. And probably if I flip these over, we're going to see back damage. Yeah, so that back damage accounts for the grade, but the image quality, these would sell for higher than what you would probably imagine just due to the image quality of those two cards. Okay. And another one of my favorite teams, I'm a West Coaster, so one of my favorite teams is, I can't afford, they do make these cards of California League players, but there's only 1, 2 known to exist of each of those cards, and they're prohibitively expensive. So not really all that collectible for the average, person that has a budget. So a budget conscious collector can't collect those. But about as west as they get is Denver. And so I have kind of always collected a little bit of the Denver guys. Here's Klussman, Here's Darnbro, and there's another one. So this one's kind of an interesting one because same pose, but his name is missing off of the one. And so that's a kind of a fun one. And this is Abner Dalrymple, and he is also for Denver, even though that can be a little bit tough to see. Now, they did make cards of players predominantly in the National League and the American Association, but they also made cards of people in the Western League, the California League, as I said, and then there's a lot of just various teams, largely due to the fact that players were changing teams, and they would update where that player was playing. And one of my favorite little subsets, and they are kind of tougher to find, but I like these players for the Chicago Maroons. And one of the reasons I like them is a lot of the players have a pretty interesting backdrop that's hard to see on this one here, but it has like a simulated field in the background. And these were photographic images, so they're posed, so this player was holding that pose, so they're not outdoor action shots. 1886 to 1890 photography just didn't allow for that to be a reality. So these are indoor shots made to look outdoor. But the Chicago Maroons players have some really tough guys to find. And I really like that particular team. It's one of my favorite teams to collect. So those are some of my other favorite teams. Probably one of the hardest teams to find and one of the most collected are the players for Louisville. And the Louisville Slugger himself, Pete Browning, has cards and poses in this set. And here are some of his teammates. Here is Scott Stratton, and I am really struggling with the glare on these holders, but there's Scott Stratton for Louisville and Red Arrett for Louisville. And the Louisville players just tend to be pretty highly collected and in demand. So maybe I'll go over really quick. I'll go over some rare teams, actually. So here are some teams that aren't like highly represented, but they can be really collectible if you can find a common player, but for a new team. Okay, largely if they're for a obscure team, it's because they played for a National League, American Association, Western League team, or something along those lines, and then they were traded or sold to another team. And so you can find players like Doc Oberlander, and here he is with Syracuse. And Syracuse is not highly represented in this set, and they tend to sell for significantly more, and they're much tougher to find for some of these obscure teams like Syracuse. So here's a Syracuse player. Here is a Hamilton, Ontario player, Bill Blair. And I believe he was with the Athletics before, and then he was sold, traded, I can't remember, to that team in like the International League. And he's with Hamilton. And here is a Jim Cudworth, but for Worcester, Massachusetts. And so he was not with them. I can't remember who he was with, Washington or something like that. But then they did make an 1889 version of this card with Worcester, which I just brought up a date. So I'm going to give a quick, brief overview of the dating of this issue, which is problematic for a lot of people to figure out. So the dating of this issue, the first year that they made this set, N172, used to be called 1887. There's a lot of evidence now that late 1886 and throughout 1887, the first year was being made. And what makes an 1887 card, I'll call it 1887, just for ease of talking about it. Largely, the cards themselves will have this Old Judge cigarettes either in a banner like we see here, or in a little box in the corner. And there's various subsets within the 1887 issue, but they're going to have one of those two design styles. Okay, and there's the 0 number series, the short number series, the spotted ties, the script series. There's a lot of different subsets within that. Browns champions as well. But they're going to have generally this look to them. And again, 1887 has the Old Judge cigarettes either in a banner or in a little square in the corner. Now, if we move on to the next year, 1888, there are two versions of the 1888 series, but they're pretty similar and it's pretty easy to see. So I'm going to kind of show you this. This is one of those players for the Chicago Maroons with that cool background, and that's why it's one of my favorite teams to collect. But here we have Jack Croghan, and if you look, it says Old Judge no longer has the banner, no longer has the thing up in the corner, but it has Old Judge, and then the next line is cigarettes. And in every series, the last line is typically Goodwin and Company, New York, and that's the maker of the cigarettes. But this is 1888 with the Old Judge and then cigarettes, typically in smaller letters right under the Old Judge. And there's two versions of, two slightly different typographical versions of that, but that's an 1888 card. And then into 1889, it changes pretty drastically. Now we have Old Judge, and instead of cigarettes, we have Old Judge Cigarette Factory. And that constitutes an 1889 into 1890. Now, largely the 1890 set, so that's 1889. 1890 looks exactly the same as this, but it's usually only ascribed to 1890 if it's very obvious that we're talking about an 1890 card. And what that would mean is between the 1889 and the 1890 season, the players themselves began something called the Players League. And there was a lot, and it was a player-run league. And there was a lot of shifting between teams between the 1889 and 1890 season. Now, in the 1890 set in Old Judge, they made a new set, and they're very rare, and the image quality of the 1890 set suffered drastically. So the 1890 cards, which look identical to 1889, will typically have much worse photo quality. And I have one here to kind of show you what that's about. But normally they're only ascribed to 1890 if the team can be positively attributed to that player for the 1890 season. And so they'll have things, and this one's going to be really difficult for my camera to pick up. But this player here, Jimmy Cooney, played for, in this year, NL. And it's really, really hard to see here. But it does say, I think, Chicago. And then there's in little parentheses here, NL. And so that, I mean, you can see the image quality. It still has the cigarette factory at the bottom. Image sucks. But now, instead of being, you know, the team that he was with for 1889, he's with a team that's being attributed to either the National League or the Players League, or PL. And some of the true rarities within this set are found in the 1890 cards with the Players League or the National League. Okay, so always be on the lookout for those. I'd love to get some if you find some, so let me know. But those are the years. So 1887, 1886, 1887, 1888, 1889, 1890. So it's a quick, brief overview of the dating. But I'm going to go into just a few more. Again, I don't want this video too long. My videos tend to be kind of long. One of my other favorite sort of subsets to collect, I love the portraits. So you can have, again, this isn't, well, we just went over the dating. So we'll, from this point on, kind of go over the cards and date them as we do them. This is an 1887 card of the manager for Indianapolis, Watch Burnham. And so cool bowler hat, portrait. And in here we have an 1887, again, card of Kid Madden, who had a kind of a baby face, which hence the name. And again, this is a portrait. There's some people that really like the portrait cards in this set, and they tend to sell for more than a, you know, another Kid Madden would. I think Watch Burnham's only found with the portrait, so you won't find him in an action shot, but who wants an action shot of a manager? So those are what are considered portraits. And I have one more portrait over here that I'm going to kind of show again later. And that's Jim McCormick. And so I'll go over this one here. So Jim McCormick, this one actually could date to 1886. And the reason being is that Jim McCormick, A, should be in the Hall of Fame and probably will be at some point. This card is actually what is considered a Franken card. So if you look really close, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to pick that up, the photo portion, so the actual portion of the picture here, has been pasted on top of another card. And I'm not sure why that was done other than to just make it look better. This was likely trimmed and put into a scrapbook. Someone retrieved it from the scrapbook and put this player on another card. Probably an actress, because they did make other non-baseball Goodwin and Company cards. But Jim McCormick played for, I believe, Chicago. And they made him in this, what's called, I think, the script series and short number series. And so here he is. And if it says McCormick pitcher, that likely means it's an 1886 card, maybe really early 1887. They made the same cards. Again, they reprinted a lot of the poses, adding Pittsburgh, because in April of 1887, he was traded to Pittsburgh, I believe for George Van Haltren and maybe some cash or something like that. But this is one of the earliest ones, and I love that image. But again, I picked it up. It was cheap because it's a Franken card. It's all original, but, you know, it's not. This is not how it was issued. And likely, again, going to make the Hall of Fame someday. Look up his WAR. It'll surprise you. And, you know, so anyways, that's one of the star players that, again, may someday make the Hall of Fame. I didn't bust out any of my Hall of Famers for this video. But another one that's kind of in that same category is Harry Stovey, another player that probably should be in the Hall of Fame, but isn't. And the funny thing about these players is that a lot of the players that played most of their careers in the American Association have not been inducted into the Hall of Fame. There's only very few, Bid McPhee and a few, that have kind of done that. So you got a lot of players like Tony Mulaney and, you know, Bid McPhee and players like that were really good, even Charles Comiskey, that were really, really good, but never gained the enough attention for the Hall of Fame because the American Association was viewed as a second-tier Hall of Fame, major league compared to the National League. So there's a little bit of bias going on there. But Harry Stovey is one of those guys that I think has a good chance of someday making the Hall of Fame. So when I see a card of him and a clean one like this, graded a 3, I'll pick that up every single day. So the Stovey and McCormick are two cards that I picked up largely because I like the player, and I think there's a good chance that potential Hall of Fame someday. Some interesting images, you know, in this set. Here's another manager, and again, here is an 1889 card because of the Cigarette Factory. And this is McGonigal, the manager for Brooklyn. And upon first glance, he almost just looks like he would be like an actor or something like that. So when you see those actor cards, you know, look through them and make sure you're not looking at a baseball player. Okay. I just like the image, you know, pretty cool. Almost like a 2/3 shot versus the portrait. Another image, this one, kind of a cool player in history, Pete Hodling. I just like that image because it looks like he ate something wrong that didn't agree with his stomach or something like that. I'm not sure what he's doing as it relates to baseball in that picture, but there he is. So when I saw that picture, I was like, I'm not sure what that is, but I love it. So I had to have it. So again, cool card, somewhat lighter image. That's probably about par for the course as far as the image goes. Technical grade only a 1.5, again, because of what's on the back. So if that wasn't on the back, that would be graded higher, and the price might be a little bit higher. But again, image quality is key. And here's one that really shows the studio images that were used for the set. Here's a player that's, you know, I think attempting to slide, but it just looks like he was shot dead, or he's in a war zone or something like that and trying not to get hit by a sniper. I'm not sure what that actual pose is, but it's kind of an interesting one, and that's Crooks for Omaha, Western League team. And again, 1889 card. I guess I'll go over, I only have 2 more stacks to go over, so again, not a, you know, exhaustive study of this set. I could make a series of videos about this set. I just kind of wanted to highlight the set itself. it's a set that I've always loved, and I love that image quality. If every Old Judge card had that image quality, it would be amazing. But these are two cards that are on the list of the really, so there's different tiers of rarity. You can have some of the most common cards to find of some of the biggest players. So like one of the most common cards in the Old Judge set is Cap Anson. However, there's a second image of Cap Anson that's impossible, only a select few known of that. But some of the obscure players were only found in the last 20, 30 years. And so there's some extreme rarities. These two players that I have in my hand here are both on the very scarce list. And first one we have is John Henry for Philadelphia. And this one is a guy named Pat O'Connell. And he was for a long time mistakenly listed along with another player named Pete Connell. And I think I have his card over here. And that player has cards in the set, but this is not him. So we have Pete Connell here for Des Moines and Patrick O'Connell for the same, and so they mistakenly listed him, but this is not that same player. And this is a guy named Pat O'Connell. So this is a little bit of an error card, and they did issue this card with O'Connell corrected. So Pat O'Connell is on that very list. Pete Connell's in the tough to find list. So made a mess of everything. And the last person I'm going to talk about is a card that I've been kind of trying to find all of his different poses. And that's of a guy named George Treadway. Now, you may ask, what is it about George Treadway? And here are 3 different poses of George Treadway. Okay. Again, all of these are 1889 cards of George Treadway. So I'm going to kind of focus on this one here. Now, George Treadway, it's really hard to see his face there, but George Treadway was, for a large, to put it mildly, he was kind of run out of the league because there were rumors and grumblings. And again, this is 1889, 1890s. There were grumblings that George Treadway was in fact actually African American. Now, there's no evidence that he was. And, there were newspaper articles and everything claiming that he was African American. But it doesn't appear that that is the case. But it did affect his career, and eventually he was sort of, largely run out of the league because he was being targeted by racial slurs and just all around terrible behavior. But that, just the story alone has made me, every time I see a George Treadway, and I think there's 5 poses, and I have 3 of them here of him. I've just picked them up when I can. So just one of those players that I really like. So again, there's no real wrong way to collect these. You can collect teams, players, leagues, regions of the country, cool poses, rarities. I'll put it this way, nobody really collects the entire series unless they're an absolute glutton for punishment, and there are some of those out there. But, there's no wrong way to do this. And but again, with a set of over 500 players and 2,500 plus poses, it's seemingly untenable to try to collect all of them. Now, as far as price point goes, I don't want to date this video, if you're watching it years from now and saying, like, man, that's so far off. But as of 2025, when I'm making this video, cards in lower grade with poor image quality can be had for a few $100. Nice commons, with a nice image, can run, $300 to $500. If you're talking about Hall of Famers, you're typically getting up into the thousands of dollars range. If you're looking at rarities, again, the same thing, $1,000 plus. And, you know, I don't tend to focus too much on, you know, value and everything like that. But I think it's an important thing, at least as of right now, to kind of go over that just so that, hey, I really like these cards. I want to get into it. Just knowing what the price point is on those cards. So again, this was just meant to be sort of a brief overview of one of my favorite sets. I don't go out of my way to collect old Judge cards, but when I can find them of players I like or a tougher card for a cheaper price, I will 100% pick those up. But again, awesome set if you're really interested in looking at those. If you have any questions for me about this set, feel free to, you know, put it in the comments below. And as always, everybody, thanks. Happy collecting.